And we are back with day 11 of Survivor 46 and 46. Just finished watching Survivor Guatemala, which was a lot. Not necessarily in a good or bad way. I kept referring to it as the ultimate like Survivor filler season. For those that don't watch like anime or any type of show that has filler seasons or arcs, this is very much the season where it's like, yeah, you can skip it if you want and you don't really miss anything until Winners at War comes out. Then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, who's this person? If you've never seen Guatemala, because even in Heroes versus Villains, they don't reference the fact that Stephanie played on this season and was one of the bigger villains on the season. I would say there are two people that were bigger than her overall. Julia, why did you want to do this one?
Man, I'm just letting you know, man, before we get started, that, man, regardless of what anyone says, I am Julia Hawkins, not
Hawkins.
Hogaboom. Hawkins, I'm a landscaper. Thank you.
Um,
But why
go
did
ahead.
I want to do Guatemala? Well, Coach, when you said you can pick your seasons, I went, what are my hot take seasons? What are the seasons that I know I enjoy a lot and other people don't? Because I could do the typical ones. I could Ashley James versus Goliath or whatever. But no, I said I want Africa, Vanuatu, Guatemala. I like Guatemala, I think, more than most people, probably more than anyone else I know that's not playing in Guatemala. I don't know why I have my weird Survivor tastes, but I really like the characters. Again, it's a shame that no real returnees besides Steph again and then Danny coming out of the season, because I think there's some really, really great characters in this
This
season.
coming off of Palau yesterday, this was a nice change of pace. One, because there's no tribe that gets completely decimated. But two, I feel like the characters on this season are a lot better than the ones in Palau because outside
Yeah.
of Tom, Stephanie, and like outside of Tom and Stephanie, you get a cute little Kobe story arc, and like, but then this season you've got Jamie Judd, you've got Rafe, you've got Stephanie 2.0, you've got Bobby John versus Jamie. I feel like this season is a lot more. Oh my goodness, you jumped the gun because I was going to bring that up in a little bit. And I still am because there are a lot of parallels between the two of them. But I feel like the cast this time around was so much better, and I think that the location
Beautiful.
was very beautiful. But I think that's where the negative side of the season comes from, where a lot of people look at it because they're dying. Like it goes back to like Africa
Yeah.
and Marquesas and stuff. Where like, hey, let's
I
just put them in a spot where, and let's not have a merge feast.
I
Let's just
think
kill.
I think that's why I love the seasons I do. Africa, everyone almost died. Vanuatu, there was that earthquake where everyone could have died, and then
True.
everyone almost died. I think I figured it out. That's the underlying.
Want
I
to watch
just
people die on TV? Yes,
like seeing
you're the
stuff
fan
better.
that the Survivor wants to appeal to in these first few seasons.
Absolutely, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Everyone loves Palau. You said it when you did the Palau podcast. Your most overrated season of all time. I am a Palau hater until I die. I'm not a fan. And everyone loves Palau and really overlooks Guatemala. Just like I say with Vanuatu, give it another shot.
Give it another shot.
Like just like a lot of the other seasons in this stretch, it is very close to a pagonging. It's pretty close to a pagonging, but the characters are fantastic.
They are, and I think, and just going back to this comment because this is what I was thinking this entire time is Danny just did the exact same thing Chris did, where it's like, hey, I'm just gonna wait and just let these people turn on each other because, and she even says it at Final Tribal, it's like, yeah, everyone else is trying to do this, that, and the other at the merge. At the merge, I was just trying to like be everyone's friend, so that when they inevitably start turning on each other, they come to me and say, "Oh yes, Danny's," and she got in with the two big leaders of that larger alliance, of that 6-person alliance. Then I think that at that point, at Final Three, I think either like if Stephanie or Rafe wins, I think there's a very big chance that they take Danny. I don't know for sure, but I do think that Danny played it the Chris way of let's just they've got Judd and Jamie. Of course they're going to flip on each other. Why wouldn't they? These two are crazy. And I think that she doesn't have. People like to talk about bitter juries, and people were bitter and bitter. I think the Guatemala jury is actually very bitter, and I think that most of them did vote emotionally for their win. Like Danny deserved to win 100%. Like that's not because she won. But I do feel like most of the people, with the exception of maybe like Gary, voted emotionally because Judd was never going to vote for Stephanie because she lied to her, and Rafe was never going to vote for Danny because she voted him out after he released her from his the promise they had made, whatever that means. I think that Cindy and Jamie and Lydia were all pissed off at Stephanie because she voted them out. I do feel like, yeah, I feel like people don't look at this jury when they say bitter because it's not flipping Russell Hantz that loses or whatever, like because all his fanboys. Because it's Stephanie that loses, people are just like, oh no, it's fine. I did a podcast maybe 3 years ago where I talked about how Danny Boatwright was a very underrated winner. And I do think she is. Like, she's not like, I still think that Visepia or some other female winner should have been on Winners at War over Danny. But I do think there's a lot of stock to how she played this season.
Absolutely.
The rumor and innuendo is she would keep things away from Prod when she would do confessional because she didn't want them to
Stealth
spoil
bomber.
anything. Yeah.
She
And I
she
get
beat the
that.
radar.
Yeah,
She beat
and
the
I
radar.
get that, and the fact that she was able to do what Chris did before, but be everyone's best friend to the point where in this season people aren't pissed off at her, and she doesn't have to put on some type of weird performance like Chris did. She can just
Yeah.
actually say, "Hey, I didn't backstab anybody."
The only reason she's not like there's three big reasons I think she's not appreciated as much as Chris. One, because she's a woman, obviously,
I agree with you.
naturally. Two, because she didn't have to put on this giant performance at FTC. Chris is known like that. That's the thing is Chris is one of the best winning final tribal councils of all time. Danny didn't need to
He's a
do that
bullshitter.
because she played the actual game so well, but that's not something to point to. And three, she just didn't articulate that throughout. Where we talked about it in Vanuatu. Chris was this great narrator. We always come to
Yeah,
him for the tidbits, just kind of putting a bow on everything that's happening. It's like we didn't get that from Danny. But their playstyle is extremely similar. The trajectories is exactly the same. And it's very interesting.
yeah, and I would say that Rafe is probably the main character. I think
Mhm.
once the merge happens, he is the narrator, and I do think that Rafe wins in either final two. Um, I didn't expect Rafe to be as. I mean, he wasn't motherfucking them or anything, but like I didn't expect Rafe to be as annoyed as he ended up being with Danny and how she handled that final three deal. But I did enjoy Rafe. I enjoyed his character arc, especially at the merge, where he's sitting there feeling bad that he's a part of the bad guys, and eating the food while Jamie, who we're gonna get to Jamie, we're gonna spend some time with Jamie. Jamie's openly antagonizing specifically Bobby John during the endurance challenge, Bobby John and Brandon at the endurance challenge. And you feel for Rafe, and they have to comfort him, and he gets comforted a lot, but he's also giving confessionals where it's like, hey, at some point I'm gonna have to flip this because I don't like the way that Jamie is so paranoid all the time. And I do think that when they do eventually make the move, it is the right time to make the move. I do think that if they had screwed around and like kept Brandon into the merge and got rid of Jamie, yeah, that could have been bad for their alliance. If they had, gotten rid of anyone else at that final 10. I mean, I know that Gary plays the idol, which another thing we'll get to, but if they had got rid of one of them at that point, it would have been bad. I think that when they did finally pull that move to get rid of Jamie, it was the right time, because at that point, you're basically playing the Tina game of, okay, as long as we have one more person than the
You
other side, then it's fine. Yeah.
absolutely.
You go ahead.
No, I was saying, and you could afford to do that as long as we have one
Yeah.
more. We can trim the
Yeah, and
fat
you
a little
know that
bit.
everyone is in. You know that no one's gonna. You trust that no one's gonna flip, and if they do flip, they're not gonna flip on you, or they'll at least tell you, "Hey, this is what's actually going to happen."
Yeah.
And I do think that Rafe is. We're going to use the phrase underrated a lot in this particular one, because there are a lot of people that are underrated in the season or just not talked about, because
Yeah.
it is the forgotten season of Survivor. It is Survivor filler. Jamie. I think that Jamie is one of the first true villains that we have on the show, and he's so great because once the game is over, him and Bobby John are best friends on the jury, and it's so fun to watch their non-verbal bromance, because we don't hear anything that they say over there, but just to watch them interact after their 9-ish episode story arc of like going like this the entire time, and the way that he gets voted out, and he can admit, oh yeah, it was blindside, that's how you play the game and all that. I think he's a great TV villain. You're rooting for him to lose. You're rooting for him to lose, but it's like when he finally loses, the fact that he can go out and be cool. So what were your thoughts on Jamie?
Yeah, I completely agree. He was the perfect person you love to hate. I think having a villain like that in as many seasons as possible is wonderful. I love it. I love when there's a true villain. When someone's going to be nasty, they're going to do whatever, but it's in the game. And you said
But it's in the game.
they can leave, they can shake everyone's hand and say, like, good on y'all. But it makes it so much more entertaining because you get all of these
It,
funny moments, like them getting up in each other's faces and looking at them as a kiss
that's
or
not
something.
nice. That's not nice. Okay, Bobby John. And I will say that I think the first time I watched this season, Jamie annoyed the shit out of me. Jamie and Judd annoyed the shit out of me, and I just kept getting upset that they wouldn't get voted out. And this time around, because there were no real compelling villains in Palau, this was a nice change of pace
Yes.
here, where it's not just Katie being, snarky in her confessional. You get Jamie and Judd openly antagonizing people a lot of the time, including going after each other at a certain point.
Yeah.
And I do think that, that's what makes this season stand out of the seasons that I have watched, the last two, so yesterday and today, are there are clear archetypes. There are clear people that we're supposed to root for and clear people that we're not, and then there's a
Yeah.
bunch of cannon fodder pre-merge, which I watched this season today, and I can honestly tell you that I cannot name most of the pre-mergers. I know there was the blonde girl, and old guy with the arm issue, and Blake and
Golden
Morgan.
boy with his golden hair.
Yes,
It's
yes,
it's very very common. It's the trend of this era, basically from Vanuatu like up to Micronesia. I would say a little bit after. Just the pre-mergers are so not memorable, except for the ones that go out like right before.
yeah.
I can. There's not a single season up to that point where I can name you every pre-merger, maybe besides China, maybe.
Yeah, I could probably, if
But
I took the time, I could probably do China. Micronesia would actually probably have been a bit hard.
it
I don't
just,
have to think about it.
yeah. As someone who really loves watching characters and watching arcs, um, in seasons of Survivor, like it's something that's one I've mentioned it many times on the podcast. One of my favorite parts of Survivor is really like investing in characters. And I think that's why it doesn't bother me as much because I like looking at the full season arcs and spending more time with the characters that are going to be important rather than people who are going out pre-merge I don't really care about. But I know for some people who like to get to know everyone, it does become an issue of this era of Survivor.
Yeah, and even like our merge boot this season, Brandon. I really this time around, I loved Brandon. Brandon was
Mm-hmm.
so wholesome, and like his boot episode, he gets a lot more time, obviously, because he's going to get
Yeah.
voted out. But like, I find myself rooting for him very hard. Just like, oh, once again, it's the Rob Sesternino final three thing of Amazon, where it's like maybe I'm crazy and Brandon actually does make the jury, even though I know that that is not the case.
Mm-hmm.
And you just want him to win. And when they have to go to that tiebreaker where they have to climb or they have to balance and climb up the stairs, and immediately he just one of the first people to drop, it's just like, damn it, Brandon. Like, and you know that he's gonna go home. And you just feel bad because you know that Danny and Cindy especially don't want to send him home because they want Jamie gone, but they also know that, hey, we are playing this game and we can't afford to let Brandon stay, because if we let Brandon stay, then we could be screwed moving forward. And so
Yes.
they do the smart thing of getting rid of Brandon. And I do think that the other thing that goes along with that is Bobby, John, and Stephanie having that conversation of like, hey, just let me play on the jury. Like, I'm not trying to come to you and make this alliance. Just let me on the jury.
But then she completely takes that and like shoots it in the head at Final Tribal. So
That's true. And this is I believe, the first time that we have had returnees that are not all stars. Um, and I do think that they got the returnees right as far as,
yes.
yeah, let's get the two people that survived the longest on our last season because everyone loves our last season. Let's get these two back. They're still fairly popular. And I do think that they played, watching them actually play this time was a lot of fun. You know, watching them have to go back and forth and watching them never have to be, like, even on the swap, they didn't end up on the same tribe, and watch them kind of play against each other was really cool.
Yeah.
I've always been more of a Bobby John person than a Stephanie person, and I feel like this is the season that Bobby John like really shines
Mm-hmm.
because he has that foil in Jamie. But even just like him almost dying on the trek, you know, the fact that he takes these challenges
So serious.
more seriously than anyone that we have seen up to this point, and probably the person that takes these challenges as seriously until we get to, I don't know, like
Yeah.
probably ever, right?
Ever.
Look, I can't think of anyone that I could compare to
No.
Bobby John as far as putting everything that he has into these challenges, and whether he wins or loses. And when he pulled the face thing again that he did in Palau,
Yes.
um, it was a lot of fun to watch, and you know, watching him and Jamie go back and forth the entire time. And Bobby John, once they merge, Bobby John, most of his confessionals are Jamie's gonna screw up and I'm gonna punch him in the mouth, and it's like, well, you're not going to, Bobby John, but that would be really cool if you did, because we hate Jamie, yeah, as a character. Um, Stephanie, on the other hand, now we talked about how the season has been kind of buried and it's the forgotten season of this, that, and the other. Stephanie, this season, is one of the big three villains. And the fact that they just completely ignore that in Heroes versus Villains has always bothered me. Not as much as Candace being on the Heroes tribe, but like we'll get to that in like 9 days. Um, why do you like? Well, one, why do you think that Stephanie's game here in this season, a game that she made it to the end, isn't even referenced in Heroes vs. Villains? Before I get to the actual question,
Because it didn't fit the narrative that the producers wanted to have. Because, like we said, this was not a very popular season. This is Survivor filler in the eyes of everyone. But looking back in this like middle stages at this point, Palau was one of the more popular seasons. Like everyone loved, oh my god, this is incredible. This woman
the
survived.
Great White Hope finally won a season. I'm sorry. I mean, it's true.
Survived.
Like, oh, she's sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, it just they would prefer to capitalize on this like a hero that they have of, oh my gosh, she really did it. She survived all of it. She was alone on that island that one night and she was so scared, and how heroic and incredible, rather than, man, when she played Guatemala, she was a bitch. She was a
Well,
bitch. But
okay, so I will say that watching it this time around, she's less bitchy than I remember. Like she does, like she has her moments where she's saying words that it's like, okay, but I guess it's a part of the time
she
period. But
left
also just like she what?
she lacks a lot of self-awareness in the season, and it comes with very
Yeah.
whiny. It's more whiny and entitled. It's, would you rather have this like figure you can look up to, is like, she did it as a woman, survived it all, was alone on an island that one night, incredible, or the whiny, like, spoiled brat kind of that she turns
I
into
mean,
in Guatemala.
they could have easily just put Captain of Sports Danielle on the Heroes Tribe and put Stephanie on the Villains Tribe just based off of this season. If they really, because they were grasping at straws with a lot of, and like I'm already jumping ahead to the Heroes vs Villains at this point, but like they are grasping at a lot of straws with how they determine who's a hero and who's a villain
Yeah,
on that season. But and when I talk about Cook Islands, I have my thoughts on Candace. Um,
from Railroad
but like
Tribe.
from Railroad Tribe, yeah. So Stephanie, the fact that she made the end, right after Palau, and the fact that her and Bobby John, and they both talk about it at Final Tribal, came into this game with a big ass target on him. Stephanie's name was
Yeah.
brought up first. When her tribe finally lost, like when they lost their challenge where they were going to go to tribal,
Hmm.
her name came up, and it's like, yeah, obviously her name's going to come up because, and they start talking about, oh yeah, who deserve, like going into the merge, who deserves to be here and who doesn't. Well, these two have already played. Did they deserve to really make the merge? They've already gotten their chance. The fact that both of them were able to navigate that, and for Stephanie to navigate that, gain full control of her tribe, and then go to the finale, like go to the final two, despite the fact that she lost. I think that is a testament to Stephanie as
Yeah.
an overall player. Because if she wasn't playing on Palau and she all these people that were just fellatiing Tom the entire time, I do think that Stephanie could have found more. Like she outlasts Janu and Kobe. There is a chance that she could have figured out a way to get through. If Karen didn't suck,
If
she
Karen didn't
probably
suck.
could. Yeah. If Karen didn't suck, she probably could have made it even farther. But because Karen
Karen
sucks,
sucks. Karen sucks.
um, she and so we get to this season and we see her, be able to navigate through. And the same thing with Bobby John. Now Bobby John just ran into the numbers, and it's crazy that we're in season 11 now, and numbers going into the merge still matter to the point where they're just basically taking everybody out. And we're going to get that again in Panama tomorrow, where it's Terry versus the world. And it's because Danny is doing the Chris thing. That's why I keep saying it's not a pagonging. It's like it's pagonging adjacent, but it's not outright pagonging, because if it was,
Yeah.
then Danny would have gone before they started turning on each other. Um, why do you think we kind of briefly touched on it? Why do you think that people, besides the woman thing and everything else, that people underrate Danny as a winner?
I think a lot of it, one, we've talked about it, it's just really not a very popular Survivor season. You said this, you talked about it with like Vanuatu, of like when you went into it, you're like, I don't really care about Vanuatu, like whatever. And then you watched it and you're like, oh, this is pretty good. But I think some more people would appreciate Guatemala a bit more. But I think a lot of it has to do with the edit as well. Um, if you look at a lot of the female winners, up until, I would say, the real change came with Kim Spradlin. Um, Almost every single female winner, with maybe the only exception really being Parvati,
And
was
even
not
Parvati
telling,
didn't get much as
but
far as like professional. Yeah,
it wasn't telling the story of them. it was the downfall of the main character of the season. And
Yes.
you see it with like
Colby.
Tina,
You see,
Colby, Vesethia, Kathy. You have Amber, Boston Rob, Sandra, Johnny Fairplay. You have
Danny and
obviously here we
yeah.
have Steph, and like it's prevalent. It's something you see.
So do you
Obviously,
think that
I think the
if the
most
roles were reversed, do you think that if Steph had won, that she would have gotten the Danny edit? Or do you think that they would have actually showed, they would have portrayed that alliance? They would have still showed it the same thing, except for Stephanie wins. Do you think they would have changed anything around, or do you think that we still get the same edit?
I think she would have gotten more of the content that Rafe kind of did, where Rafe was in the Big Bad Alliance, but he was seen as a fuller character of having the moral dilemmas and knowing it's the quote unquote axis of evil, but like
Poor
struggling
Rafe.
and grappling with like his morals in the entire thing. I think she would have gotten more content in that regards of still like, I'm in this alliance. Everyone here is kind of bad and villainous, but I'm still thinking about it critically and like understanding the effects that it has on the people around me. And I think it would have been the downfall of Rafe.
Instead of,
Yes.
yes. I just want to touch on this comment real quick. It's just a fun, quick story because I'm assuming we're talking about Billy Garcia because we mentioned the Railroad Tribe thing.
Hero Drive.
I got drunk with Billy Garcia for the season 43 finale. He was like, we were hanging out, and the two of us started shooting the shit about the season. He was saying, "Hey, I think Gabler's going to win." We're doing shots. And then when Gabler wins, I like start screaming like it's Billy Garcia's fault that that fucking Gabler won. We get on my Snapchat story, and I'm like, I still haven't saved. I'm just yelling at this man. It's like, I can't believe you made Gabler win this, that, and the other. Billy's an awesome guy. I've met him now twice, and both times we've shared drinks and we've shared stories. Yeah, he's a great guy. I can't wait to talk about him for Cook Islands. But back to Guatemala, a lot of the location. This is the tribal setup on this season is amazing.
Yeah.
And it sucks that they have to continuously walk up the stairs every night. Because at a certain point, I feel like that would just be hell because they are not, eating much. But the actual setup is amazing. I do think that a lot of the challenges that we get, a lot of the rewards that we get, where they get a pool for their, for their camp, and people can come visit, which is, I think, the first time that we've seen that happen.
Danny's
Um, yes, exactly, and I there are so many things in the season, and I think the big thing the season runs into negatively is the fact that there's no real moment in the season. Like for super fans, I feel like, oh yeah, but what about Judd's ADD and what about the scumbags and all this other stuff? But like to a casual or someone that hasn't watched the season, it's like, oh, nothing really happens in Guatemala. There's nothing that really stands out as like that's a moment.
yeah. As I was saying with like a lot of parallels to Chris, where it's like Vanuatu, you can point to like this epic final tribal council performance where most people who have like seen seasons and like have this course know that like this is, even if you haven't seen the season, like this is a legendary performance at final tribal council. It's like Guatemala doesn't have that. Like, I have
Guatemala doesn't have
my favorite scene. Yeah, I have things like I reference, but that's because I'm chronically on Survivor online. But you ask any casual fan anything about Guatemala, they're not going to tell you anything. They're not going to know a single thing.
yeah, but and I want to touch on this because I do feel like one of the moments that probably should be talked about a little bit more is the car situation.
Yeah.
Where Cindy is presented with this very, I think it's one of the first, if not the first time that it's happened. Hey, you can either give all these cars to everyone left in the game, or you can have one for yourself. and Cindy chooses to keep it. I don't know how long in real time she
Deli-
what?
deliberated.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes. Deliberated over it, but fireworks just went off outside my house. What would you have done?
I would have done what she did.
Yeah, I feel
I
like
would have
most
taken the
people would.
car.
I feel
Most
like
people would
most
have
people
taken the
would.
car. Most people
Stephanie
would
even
have.
says that when she comes over. Scale would have taken the car too.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
that that goes into the whole Danny of it all again of, oh well, you see what just happened. Like and like all you have to do is piss off the wrong, or not even piss off the wrong person. Say certain things to people to get them annoyed with each other, because now that Judd and Jamie are gone, the two people that have the shortest fuses are gone. Now you have to start like really trying to like plant seeds of
Mm-hmm.
how can I get these people to hate each other? Because now I'm in a majority. If I really want to, I could be number three, for now.
Well,
Um,
people who believe Survivor is rigged, this is one of those things that you can point to, of like, not like actually rigged, but some people are
well,
like,
no, no.
well,
What's point to what?
make, you're like you said, the two people with the biggest fuses are gone. Like in looking at the optics, Danny should go home in this situation, but it's like, okay, we'll put someone in this situation where they have to choose. You get a car, or everyone gets a car. Just little
Yeah.
things like that. I know people are like, Survivor makes things up sometimes on the spot like that.
Yeah, and I will say that I did really enjoy the way they did the swap this season.
Mm-hmm.
Just
I
making it
did.
seem like it's going to be a regular run of the mill reward challenge, and then all of a sudden it's like, nope, sorry, we're actually doing this time. But also, you just fed four people a lot of food, and we're going to send them off this way. And I do like a lot of a lot of the things that they threw at the players this season, whether it's the trek at the beginning of the season, whether it's how they did the swap, even how they did the merge feast. Like people are complaining though, we've been merged for 2 days, and we haven't had any food, and then for I believe the first time, if not the second, the first time that they've ever said, hey, you can sit out the challenge and eat food if you want.
Yeah.
Um, and they, we get a large majority. I think Cindy and Judd are the only two people from that alliance to say, oh, we're probably
Yeah.
just going to do this. I don't know what is going on outside. I think it's fireworks, but just if you hear anything, no one's being shot.
I can't hear it.
Um, okay, good. Um, I this is kind of straying off topic a little bit. Historically, I'm not into blondes. I am in love with Cindy. Cindy is the one of the most gorgeous people I have seen. Period. But especially through these first 11 seasons,
I'm
Cindy's
not the
gorgeous.
I'm not the right podcast guest for this.
I'm not saying you have to agree, because I can also say Bobby John is a lot more attractive in this season than he was in the last season. Just especially after he shaves and he's sitting on the jury, I'm like, that's an attractive man. That is a very attractive man. Someone tweeted out earlier they cloned Bobby John 3 times for this season, and I'm like, 3 times? I know Jamie and I know Brandon, who's the third one, and I forgot about
Like,
Blake. About Blake. um, some of these other
Golden
characters
Boy.
now, some of these other characters that like I said, the pre-merge was not, but we did, and you brought this up yesterday when we were actually with each other. Brian, I think Brian was a very fun
Yes.
pre-merge character. His confessional where he votes out Golden Boy is iconic to super fans. I do think that he did, because it's early Survivor, he did run into a swap screw type situation. But what were your thoughts on Brian?
I love Brian. I said it to you yesterday, like I said, we were together. Brian is my favorite, like, random pre-merge Survivor player of all time. Very ahead of his time. Just uber strategic. And he really did get swap screwed. I reference Bait Blake all the time. I
That's
think he,
weird.
again, criminal. Criminal, they never brought him back. Criminal,
Blake?
on the ballot for second chances. Put him on the ballot. Put him on the ballot for second chance. That was ridiculous. He liked one of my tweets one time, and I cried. I love you, Brian Corden.
Oh, you're talking about Brian. I thought you were talking about Blake still.
No, I said Brian.
Okay, all right. Brian, yes. Oh, fun fact about Brian. You know, Brian did SAT prep for a lot of people that go to your school in New York
Oh,
City.
that's so. Who knew?
Yeah, when I did 42 and 42, I was watching this season on campus, and someone was like, "I know that guy. He taught me and a few other people prep me for the SAT. You know, coming into here." I'm like, "That's really cool."
Brian, if you
Brian's
want to talk SAT, you let me know.
Brian is one of the only pre-mergers that really stands out this season. Like I said earlier, we've got blonde girl whose name I forgot. We've got old guy whose name I forgot.
Jim.
Jim.
First boots.
Blonde girl, I forgot her name. Was no, that wasn't Morgan, but there was a Morgan there somewhere. There was
Or like a Brittany
Blake.
thing. I think there was like a Brooke or like a Brittany.
Brooke was the blonde girl. And then there was also, and I know her name, and I've forgotten it. The one that said that Judd had ADD.
Margaret.
Margaret, who was helping out Blake when he was dying. When they yes, and I think that's another thing is that this season runs into that pre-merge issue that you brought up earlier of these people just they're not memorable, and we don't get a memorable pre-merge again until. You said China. I wouldn't disagree with that. I feel like
I wouldn't even say it was China. I only said China because smaller cast, like less people in the pre-merge. But it's like you really don't get a memorable pre-merge, I don't think, until Heroes versus Villains.
Till Heroes versus Villains,
Yeah.
and that's because we know all of them.
That's
I
because
would say that, yeah, and even then, like after Heroes versus Villains, you probably don't get it again until Blood versus Water. You know, it's a while, and I think and I try not to hold that kind of stuff against seasons because Vanuatu had the same problem where they had their generic four white guys, but I because Vanuatu was so great for this, you know, this season, I'm going to give it like a 3.5 out of 5, basically the same I gave Palau. Would I have it above Palau? Yes, I would have it above Palau. Palau is just boring. Palau is boring. It's so boring.
Palau is amazing on your first watch. Like
Yes.
Palau does not have rewatchability at all. At all. There's no different story arcs you can follow or different relationships you can really track on a rewatch. It's one person is edited the whole time, person wins, like you know what's happening with Oolong. It's not fun.
It's not fun, and the characters are not there.
Great.
Having said that, with Guatemala, we're getting to our last two questions as always. One, we've had two people come back, the winner and the runner-up. Were they the right two? And did you think that anyone else should have been brought back before we get to 50?
I mean, there's people that I think absolutely should be brought back. That's my own biases. I think Danny was a great welcome surprise. Winners at War obviously didn't work out, but it was nice to see them reach back. And then Stephanie was one of the most iconic Survivor players at this point for like just anyone. You ask casual about Stephanie LaGrossa, and they're like, "Oh, like that one girl from Survivor." Like they know who you're talking about. That makes sense. I do think, putting my biases aside, I think it really is a shame they never brought back Rafe. I think he really proved himself as an incredible strategist that season, someone who articulated his game well, who, like I mentioned earlier, was very balanced, where he could talk about the moral issues, but still like articulate his game. And I think he would have been great in another season. Really,
I agree. I think that so anyone that follows me on Instagram, since I started doing this, every day that I post what season I'm starting, I always post a song with it that correlates somehow, some way or another to it. And for today, I did the Agents of Shield theme song because Rafe was a writer for Agents of Shield back when it aired. If Shield, you should. Um, I agree. So I think that Rafe, Jamie, probably Bobby John, Judd. If you want to go, I don't think it would have been the craziest thing to have a Brian back. I don't think it would have been the craziest thing to have someone like Jamie or who?
criminal I've not mentioned Amy. Amy was one of my favorite
Amy?
characters as well. I'm gonna beat you down. I
Well,
loved
she
her.
didn't even say that. She
But
said, "I'll beat you like a stepchild," and I'm just like, "Oh my god." Okay, crazy
I
lady. You know who
loved
we actually have not talked about at all is Gary Hawkins, aka Gary Hogaboom. Um,
it. Definitely on the ground. Idol,
definitely on the grid.
definitely, definitely.
The fact that Gary gets sussed out very fast, like he gets clocked very fast by Danny because she lives in the area and she knows who he is. And the entire scene where they swap, and I think Brian goes, "So you played in the NFL?" And he's like, "No, And then he tells Danny says, "Oh yeah, like Central
You play
Michigan." He's like,
football at Central
I went to
Michigan.
Central Michigan, but I didn't play football." It's like, dude, yeah, what are you doing? He almost pulled a John Rocker, where John Rocker's like, "Oh yeah, my name's John Wetland." John Wetland, who is a retired baseball pitcher. So John Rocker, like, you're not doing yourself any favors. At least with Gary, up until the point that he says he went to Central Michigan, I thought he was playing it very well. And then
Yeah,
when he said, "Oh yeah, I went to Central Michigan, but I didn't play football," it's like, well, this woman clearly knows who you are. Then, if you're gonna say that you went to Central Michigan, you know what's up. But the idol. This is the first season where we have the hidden immunity idol. It is in its infancy as far as how it's used, where you have to play it before the votes are cast. How do you feel about the fact that they changed it? Because I love it. I know we don't get
the
like a real idol until 15, 14. We don't get it till 14. We don't get it
14.
till 14. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's not really dynamic here, and I'm glad that they ended up making the switch. Um, this was if we're comparing the idols that we see in these next couple seasons to like the Bears and in Goldilocks, it's this one is like too little, and then you get to the two god idols in the next couple seasons, which are way too much, and then we find our perfect happy medium in Fiji with the idol proper that we know today. But I think that's just another really underreported thing of Guatemala is kind of like the Survivor firsts that they had in there, where this was like our first captain's returnee season, which is something that Survivor would do several more times moving forward. This is the first real advantage, two different advantages kind of put into the game with we had the idol obviously still in its infancy, but we also had Danny's advantage that she won in the auction to help her with that immunity challenge, which she ended up winning, where we see the like two first advantages ever in Survivor come into play in this
Yeah.
season. Obviously, that's a lot of the strategy in the game today. So it was really first of its time and something doesn't get its flowers for.
Yeah. It doesn't. And when we get to Panama and Cook Islands, and how that idol is there, and then for them to try to retcon it 10 seasons later and say, "Oh no, it's Tyler Perry came up with this idea." It's like, you mean the idea you had in 12 and 13? Because it's the same thing.
Same thing.
Um, and the last question obviously is, if there were somebody or some folks from this season that you have to see on season 50.
Brian Corden, please, Survivor Gods. But
Okay, so real answer.
That is my real answer. But I think the odds of anyone from Guatemala coming back are slim to none. I think the only real chance would be Stephanie LaGrossa. Am I dying to see Stephanie LaGrossa back on my screen? No, I'm not. I could really live without it. I would personally rather have no one from Guatemala than have Stephanie back on my screen. I feel like we've seen her arc, we've seen all she can offer to
And we just
Survivor.
are on the traders. We
Yeah,
just want season 1 of the traders.
I have no other like desire to see what Stephanie could bring to the strategic aspect of the game. And
I would say probably Rafe
I think the only
or
issue
Bobby John.
I think the only issue with Rafe is obviously the writing, which
The
means
writing, yes.
that would be my real answer, but
Yeah.
knowing
Bobby
that.
John, I would love to see Bobby John. Just I feel like his type of character is it's no more like it's not a thing anymore. But if they did and they were like, hey, we want somebody back from Guatemala and be Bobby John in an instant, like I want to see Bobby John in his 40s trying to overly compete in these challenges and like who is he going to get into a rivalry with, are we going to have Bobby John versus I don't know DK
Cody,
Chillin.
it's like Cody from whatever 43 and up in his face, and they're all trying to
Yeah,
outshit. I
or
Bobby
DK
John,
Chillin.
GK Chillin. No, I'm not a fan. Um, Bobby John's archetype, as you said, doesn't exist really in Survivor modern day, and it's a shame because the best way I can equate it to is when you're watching America's Got Talent and someone comes on that they just put on this TV because they are bad. They're so bad. But it's just a train wreck and you can't look away and you're still laughing and giggling to the person next to you because it's that bad. That's what Bobby John and his archetype was. And it's a shame that we don't see it more.
Well, to wrap up this Guatemala thing, I it was fine. Guatemala's fine. That's the best thing. Guatemala's fine. It's more fun to watch than Palau, but it's just fine. It's what the kids might call mid.
Mid.
So tomorrow, well, I guess soon. I paused the end of the reunion because Panama starts. So tomorrow I'll be doing Panama, Exile Island, and then we're off to the races. We're on our way to Micronesia. Micronesia's coming soon. Heroes versus Villains. I think we're 9 days away from that, so
Yeah.
that's coming up soon. I'm still nowhere close to being halfway done with this, and I'm very low energy today. I think Palau like bored me so much yesterday that
It
like
drains you.
I was so low energy with this, so I do apologize for that. Hopefully, that I'm back to about here tomorrow for Exile Island and going into Race Wars and Fiji in the next coming days. So thank you all again, Julia. Thank you. We'll probably have Julia.
My left.
No, not probably. Julia will be back for the 46 live stream that we're doing the last
I
day.
will.
Hopefully. Everyone's coming back. That's the thing. Everyone's
Woo!
coming back. It's like the end game. But thank you all, and we will see you on the other side.